On division? I declare the motion carried on division.
Second reading of this bill.
Ce
Therefore, this bill stands referred to the Standing Committee on Industry, Science and Technology.
Statements by members. Déclaration de député.
The Honourable Member for La Pointe de l'Île. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister is meeting his provincial counterparts today to talk about the environment, right after he's imposed a pipeline on BC and while he's thinking about doing the same thing to Quebec. They should also talk about health care because Quebec doesn't accept either the cuts or the conditions. They should also talk about softwood lumber because Quebec refuses to be included in another protectionist agreement which only profits the West. He should talk about Bombardier, which the federal government continues to ignore while the Ontario automobile sector is getting hundreds of millions of dollars. They should be talking about C-29, which will allow Toronto's banks to get around Quebec's laws and which will hurt our consumers. Finally, the theme of the day is federalism, something that weakens Quebec to the benefit of Canada, which prevents Quebecers from making the choices that they want to make. That'll be the theme of these meetings for Quebec until these meetings are international meetings. The Honourable Member for Argenteuil, La Petite Nation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I rise in the House to talk about accessibility. The Minister of Sport and Persons with Disabilities has been organizing, since this summer, consultations across the country on the theme of an accessible Canada. The goal of these consultations is to create a new Accessibility Act. The Canadians that we have met with have told us about their experiences and the challenges that they live every day. Throughout these consultations, I learned from the Canadians we talked to that even a simple threshold or a doorway can represent a major obstacle to certain people with reduced mobility. I'm proud to say that our government is working for a more inclusive and more accessible Canada for all Canadians. Mr. Speaker, I invite all members to hold consultations on accessibility in their ridings, and they'll see for themselves that even the smallest improvements can make a world of difference.
Member for Barrie-Innisfil.
Mr. Speaker, this Saturday I'll be hosting my first annual family skate at the Barrie Molson Centre from 2 to 3 p.m. in support of the Barrie Food Bank. Admission is free and skaters will enjoy complimentary hot chocolate, candy canes, and will be joined by players from the OHL Barrie Colts, their mascot Charlie Horse, and will also be able to take ice photos with the kids of all ages. Mr. Speaker, 2,800 people visit the Barrie Food Bank every month. 70,000 pounds of food are used and 3,500 children are fed. Some of the items Peter Sundborg and his team are looking for this time include large diapers, jam, peanut butter, flour, canned vegetables, cereal, sugar, and baby formula. I'll also be hosting my Christmas open house on December 16th and collecting food for the Innisfil Food Bank. I'm pleased to do my small part for those less fortunate and encourage all Canadians to do their part to help food banks during this holiday season. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for London West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In recent weeks, London, Ontario has been saddened by tragedies in our community as a result of drunk driving. As the holiday season is now underway, it is more important than ever that we keep our friends and loved ones safe. I would like to personally acknowledge the efforts of the London chapter of Mothers Against Drunk Driving and their dedicated corps of volunteers who work diligently for many years to keep our roads safe for everyone. These incredible volunteers are continuously educating the public and support local victims and survivors. They participate at ride checkpoints, make classroom presentations, and support national programs such as the School Assembly Program and Project Red Ribbon. I encourage everyone to call their local police stations if they see any suspicious drivers. I would also like to remind Canadians that keeping our roads safe also means that they should not be reporting ride checkpoints on any social media channels. Together, we can all make sure our loved ones get home safe over the holidays. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Burnaby South.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister broke his promise and betrayed British Columbians by approving the Kinder Morgan pipeline. In doing so, he's given the company control of a 150-meter wide strip of land from Edmonton to Burnaby, Mr. Speaker. He has empowered Kinder Morgan to use Section 73 of the National Energy Board Act, which allows the company to expropriate public land, private land, land from churches, land from schools, municipal land, even land from First Nations traditional territories and reserve land without consent or social license. Mr. Speaker, to add insult to injury, the Natural Resources Minister said he would use the Army to help expropriate land and to ram this pipeline through our province. Now, Mr. Speaker, I tabled this week Motion 107, which calls on the government not to use military or paramilitary force to help ram this pipeline through our beautiful province, Mr. Speaker. I've been fighting against this pipeline since 2011, Mr. Speaker. My party's against it. Mr. Speaker, what I'm calling on is the Liberals on that side of the House to stand with us and to choose British Columbia.
The honourable member for Willowdale.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 68 years ago today, the United Nations officially adopted the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide. To honour this momentous occasion, I ask all members of this esteemed House to join me today to mark the second annual International Day of Commemoration and Dignity of the Victims of the Crime of Genocide and of the Prevention of the Crime. As chair of the All-Party Parliamentary Group for the Prevention of Genocide and Other Crimes Against Humanity, I know that all members of this House share an overwhelming passion for human rights, human security, and human dignity, and take great pride in the leadership that Canada has always demonstrated in advancing social justice around the globe. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Elgin, Middlesex, London.
Mr. Speaker, I am so honoured to rise in the House today to spotlight one of my incredible constituents. Reese Russells has proven that you're never too young to make a difference. Reese, a grade 3 student at Forest Park Public School, wants to help those who are homeless have a Merry Christmas. She was inspired after seeing a homeless man near the Tim Hortons drive-thru in St. Thomas. Reese decided she was going to make a difference and started a local campaign to help 10 people within our community. Her classmates as well as community members jumped on board, and to date they have prepared over 100 packages to help those in need. She posted a video on her mom's Facebook page that has received over 18,000 views. Local businesses and media are also jumping on board and welcoming donations. Reese wants everybody in St. Thomas to have a Merry Christmas, especially those who are homeless during the holidays. Reese, you are an inspiration to me and to our great community. I wish everyone a Merry Christmas, especially Reese, who has an incredible heart and love for others. Thank you.
The honourable member for St. John's East.
Mr. Speaker, the tireless work of the pages does not go unnoticed and is greatly appreciated. Each year, hundreds of young Canadians apply for the opportunity and the privilege to be House of Commons pages, and yet I would argue that the privilege is ours. Today I rise to recognize and congratulate a young woman from my riding who was selected as one of only 40 pages in the House of Commons this year. Emma Wells, who is a graduate of the French Immersion Program at the Holy Heart of Mary Regional High School and is currently studying political science and public administration at the University of Ottawa. As MPs, we rely on the talented work of pages like Emma to help ensure our House proceedings run efficiently and smoothly. To the prospective 2017-2018 pages who applied this week, I wish you all the best of luck. And I ask all MPs to rise and join me and Emma's family in congratulating all of our House of Commons pages on their success and wishing them all success in their future studies. Thank you.
Hear, hear.
The honourable member for Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, the Chamber of Commerce and Industry in the Haut-Richelieu was awarded Chamber of Commerce of the Year in Quebec City at the annual gala of the Federation of Chambers of Commerce of Quebec. With the work that it's done in the support of over 630 members representing business and industry, from startups to big business, it has been able to demonstrate its dynamism. The creation of a youth wing, of an industrial committee, and the organization of a number of strategic events, particularly in the agricultural sector, have contributed to the Chamber's great success. I would like to congratulate the Chamber of Commerce and Industry of the Haut-Richelieu for this distinction, which it has obtained thanks to the involvement of its employees and administrators. This recognition reflects the excellent work that they're doing as an economic driver in the riding of Saint-Jean. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Oshawa.
Ho, 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 Mr. Speaker. As we quickly move through the month of December, I want to take this opportunity to say Merry Christmas. In Oshawa, we're already in the Christmas spirit. This year, thousands of people enjoyed Santa's downtown parade of lights, and on December 21st, we will welcome friends and colleagues to my office located at 57 Simcoe Street South, Unit 2B, for my annual Christmas open house and food drive. Bring a non-perishable food item and come down and enjoy the food, drink, and Christmas cheer. This year, Gate 316 will be the recipient of the generous food donations that Santa's helpers will bring to the event. Gate 316 is an institution in Oshawa that has helped thousands of those in need. And Mr. Speaker, during the Christmas season, the need is even greater. We have all had a busy year, and I recognize the hard work that members have done for their constituents and Canadians alike. I want to wish you, Mr. Speaker, all my fellow parliamentarians, their staff and House officers a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Joyeux Noël et bonne année.
Oh, bravo. The honourable member for New Brunswick Southwest.
Mr. Speaker, December 10th is Human Rights Day, a day when we are reminded to stand up for someone's rights and commemorate the adoption of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1948. On December 10th, Canada and the world will also mark the end of 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. These 16 days remind us of each and every woman and girl who has ever been a victim of violence. We can take actions now and throughout the year to eliminate gender-based violence. By working together, we can build a healthy, inclusive society where all women and girls are treated as equals and gender-based violence is ended once and for all. Let's all stand against gender-based violence. Actions matter. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Charlottetown.
A visionary, a feminist, an artist, an activist, an innovator, and a mom. Becca works tirelessly for and with the artistic community on PEI. She has been named to receive the Meritorious Service Medal for rejuvenating contemporary arts on Prince Edward Island. Her work as a champion for the arts speaks to her love for her community. Her dedication led to her joining forces with the Right Honourable Kim Campbell and the now Minister of Indigenous and Northern Affairs when she participated in A Bold Vision, an experiment to imagine a Canada designed by 23 women in 2014, as opposed to 23 men in 1864. A force within our community, she ably represented PEI at that table. Mr. Speaker, I extend warm congratulations to Becca and look forward to being at Rideau Hall in the new year when she receives this prestigious and well-deserved honour. Bravo.
The honourable member for Carleton.
Businesses that ignore disabled customers and employees are missing a global market of 1.3 billion people, a population bigger than any country on earth. That is Rich Donovan's message, and he would know. Cerebral palsy has not stopped him from becoming a dad, an MBA grad from Columbia Business School, and a Merrill Lynch portfolio manager. He also founded Line Connect, which places disabled people with good-paying jobs at Google, PepsiCo, Bank of America, IBM, TD, and many others. Now, Rich's index fund is investing in companies that outperform in the disability market. This fall, Rich became one of UCAN 2 magazine's top 50 most influential disabled people, along with the likes of Michael J. Fox. It takes creativity and relentlessness to overcome disabilities. Rich has turned these qualities into profit through the free enterprise system. In doing so, he empowers people like him to earn better lives and inspires all of us to overcome any obstacle.
The honourable member for Nepean.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In Ottawa's knowledge-based sector, we have over 1,700 knowledge-based companies with over 68,000 employees. We have Invest Ottawa, the economic development agency of the City of Ottawa, with a goal to make Ottawa the most innovative city in Canada. We also have a new innovation centre with $15 million investment both from the City of Ottawa and the Ontario provincial government. The previous federal government did not provide any funding. However, this year, Mr. Speaker, we announced $8 million support which will increase the technical and business capabilities available to companies through this Innovation Center. Mr. Speaker, to realize our economic development objectives and to create quality jobs, it is necessary for all three levels of the government, federal, provincial, and municipal, to coordinate and collaborate with each other. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Drummond. Mr. Speaker, it's with great pride that I rise in the House today to congratulate Ms. Andréane Benoit, a young farmer from my riding who has recently won the Next Generation of Farming Award 2016 given by Quebec's National Assembly. For 12 years now, this young entrepreneur has run the A Benoit poultry farm in Saint-Brigitte-des-Sceaux, and for a year she's also had a dairy farm. As I've toured the municipalities around Drummondville in the summer, I've had the opportunity to meet Andréane and her family, and I've been able to see that agriculture in the Benoit family, well, it's a family affair. Andréane represents the 5th generation of the Benoit family in farming. The hard work of Andréane Benoit, a woman who works in an area that is still majoritarily run by men, is one example among many others of our successful entrepreneurs who contribute to the vibrancy of the greater Drummond region. Once again, congratulations to Ms. Andréane Benoit, winner of the Next Generation of Farming Award 2016. Congratulations.
Thompson Caribou.
Mr. Speaker, today the CP holiday train is in Airdrie, Alberta, and heading through the Rockies towards my hometown of Kamloops. For 17 years, this has been a wonderful family tradition. Regardless of the weather, this beautifully decorated train is greeted by enthusiastic crowds who enjoy the music, the hot chocolate, the fire pits, and the spirit of the season. The holiday train is also one of the most important Christmas fundraisers for the local Kamloops Food Bank, helping those in our community who need a little extra at this time of year. Over the years throughout North America, it has collected more than $12 million and 3.9 million pounds of food. Thank you to Canadian Pacific. The program brings out the best in our community year after year and represents the true meaning of Christmas.
Member for Mount Royal.
Mr. Speaker, in the 1990s, I was Policy Vice President of the Young Liberals of Canada, and we proposed what turned out to be a controversial policy resolution to the National Convention. Many MPs approached us, hoping we might be convinced to withdraw our proposal. But one MP encouraged us. That was Warren Almond. He said that we should never be afraid of challenging the status quo and fighting for fundamental human rights. And that was what Warren did his entire life. For 32 years, he was MP for NDG, and he held numerous cabinet positions. He then served as head of the International Centre for Human Rights and returned to public life as a Montreal City Councillor. Whether it was heading the fight to abolish the death penalty, reminding everyone of the importance of respecting minority language rights, or just supporting his residents who wanted a stop sign at the corner, Warren fought for his principles and his constituents his entire life. I know all members will join me in extending condolences to his wife Rose, his children, and the entire NDG community.
Oral questions. Questions orales. The Honourable Opposition House Leader.
We know that the Lobbying Commissioner has launched an investigation into the Liberal Cash for Access fundraising practice, and the Ethics Commissioner has confirmed that her office is looking into these matters as well. And although the Prime Minister had promised to set a higher bar for openness and transparency, he and his government continue to hide the details about these fundraisers from Canadians. If the Prime Minister is so committed to openness and accountability, why does he refuse to make the details of these events public?
The Honourable Parliament Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I would like to indicate very clearly to the House that we do indeed have some of the strictest rules around fundraising of any level of government, and our party respects those rules. The Chief Electoral Officer stated that Canada's political financing laws are, and I quote, most advanced and constrained and transparent in the world, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we have been following the process. No rules or laws have been broken, and as such, no conflict of interest exists.
The Honourable Opposition Leader in the House.
Answer the question. It was a very simple question. The Liberals claim they are following the rules. They claim they are open and transparent, but they refuse to publicly disclose, for example, the dates and locations of these shady Liberal fundraisers. If the Liberals have nothing to hide, and they are indeed following all the rules, why are they now hiding the details of their cash for access fundraisers from the public?
Exactly. Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, the best thing I can do when you repeat a question is to often repeat the answer and assure the member that, in fact, we do have some of the strictest rules around fundraising of any level of government, and our party respects and follows those rules. I will refer to the Chief Electoral Officer when he has stated, referring to Canada's financial laws, that we have some of the most, and this is a quote, we have some of the most advanced and constrained and transparent in the world, Mr. Speaker. We are following the rules and the laws. There is no conflict of interest. It's as simple as that, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Opposition House Leader.
Well, nobody is buying their repeat lines, and it's beginning to look very foolish for all the Liberals on that side of the House. Mr. Speaker, over 30,000 full-time jobs have been lost, and the Finance Minister's own department is saying that things are only going to get worse. But yet today, the Prime Minister is threatening Canadians with a punitive and an ineffective carbon tax, putting even more jobs at risk and leading to the biggest increase to the cost of doing business in a generation. Why does the Prime Minister insist on further hurting Canadian jobs and putting Canadian businesses at a competitive disadvantage?
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
As the Honourable Member knows, later today the Prime Minister will be meeting with the Premiers, and this will be the third time that such a meeting has taken place. And that is refreshing for Canada because for many, many years there were no meetings at all. And as some of Canada's largest employers have pointed out, putting a price on carbon pollution isn't political, it's just good business. It will give Canada an edge in building a clean growth economy and make Canadian businesses more innovative and competitive. That's why nearly 30 Canadian employers have come out strongly in support of a price on carbon pollution. They know pricing pollution will bring new jobs.
Order. The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent. Mr. Speaker, this is a serious situation. Canada has lost over 30,000 full-time jobs in a year. And what's the Liberals' plan? Tax more. Tax Canadian workers more. They're inventing and increasing contributions for the CPP. They're putting taxes on healthcare plans. They're taxing dental care plans. They're creating the Liberal carbon tax. Meanwhile, in the U.S., the president-elect is going to be lowering taxes dramatically. So why does the government want to tax Canadian workers even more? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, I thank the member for Louis Saint Laurent. He normally has a good memory, and so he should remember that when we came to government, the first thing we did was to cut taxes for the middle class in this country. 9 million Canadians are now paying less income tax. And more than that, Mr. Speaker, other nations trust that Canada is a good place to invest, and that's what we're doing, Mr. Speaker. We have a plan for economic growth, for job creation at home, and the member of Louis Saint Laurent knows that well. This government will continue to work for the middle class. The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent. Well, I remember, Mr. Speaker, that this government didn't make any changes to the tax system for 60% of Canadians. Those who benefit the most are those who earn over $140,000. So let's not talk about the middle class, Mr. Speaker. But I do remember things. In 2014, the Supreme Court said that the Consumer Act was provincial jurisdiction, not federal. And with C-29, Mr. Speaker, we're headed straight into the wall because C-29 directly affects consumers' rights. It doesn't make any sense. All it's going to do is send thousands of dollars to lawyers when we know we're going to be losing. So why is the government ready to blow thousands of dollars on this when the case is already lost? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, instead of this inflamed rhetoric, let me tell you calmly what we're going to do. We're going to continue working with consumer protection groups, stakeholders, and provinces and territories to develop regulations and enforce the laws. And we will consider deferring the entry into force of certain provisions of Section 5 of the law so that we can allow the Senate Committee of Banking and Commerce to study the matter in greater depth. The Honourable Member for Saint-Hyacinthe-Bagotte. Mr. Speaker, more than a year ago, the Prime Minister signed the Paris Agreement while maintaining Stephen Harper's climate change targets. Today, this Prime Minister is going to be meeting with provincial counterparts to decide on a plan. And we want to know, does the government have the intention of presenting a true plan that will truly allow us to keep our commitments under the Paris Agreement? Or will they be satisfied with the Stephen Harper approach of taking credit for the province's work? The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Knows the Prime Minister will be meeting with premiers today to talk about this very important subject, which is a refreshing change for Canadian federalism, and we will all wait and be very optimistic about the results of that meeting. And the member also knows that we're committed to working with the provinces and territories to implement carbon pollution pricing as a central component of the Pan-Canadian framework. Canadians know we need to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions to grow our economy in a sustainable way.
The honourable member for Burnaby South.
So we get rhetoric and Stephen Harper's targets, Mr. Speaker, not very impressive. The Prime Minister is expected to announce a national climate change plan after meeting with Canada's First Ministers, but today it was reported the deal will not be unanimous and may require Ottawa to buy costly carbon credits from other countries to meet its 2030 targets. The Liberal emission targets are already too weak to meet our Paris Accord obligations, Mr. Speaker. Are we really going to pay other countries to do the work that this government has failed to do?
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, the honourable member knows that this is an unprecedented conversation, the federal government and the provinces. We have taken international leadership. The Minister of the Environment and Climate Change led in Paris. We have signed the agreement. Unfortunately, not all members of the House chose to sign the agreement, and we understand very well that this government will lead the world in its commitment to clean technologies and greenhouse gas emissions while we sustainably develop our energy infrastructure.
Member for Burnaby South.
World-leading rhetoric, Mr. Speaker, perhaps. Mr. Speaker, speaking of Stephen Harper's targets, the Minister of Health set the end of year as a deadline to finalize a new health accord. But all she's done so far is adopt Harper's cuts to provincial funding. According to Newfoundland's health minister, talks on a health accord have, quote, gone silent. All provinces have confirmed that the Liberals' cuts to health escalator will hurt Canada's health care services. So will the Prime Minister honour his election promise to negotiate fairly, stop unilaterally dictating funding, and negotiate a health care accord that improves services for all Canadians?
The Honourable Parliament Secretary to the Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, let me be very clear. There will be no cuts to health care. Canadians are proud of our publicly funded universal health care system. It ensures that no Canadian has to make the choice between economic well-being and their health. The Minister of Health met with her provincial and territorial counterparts in October, and next year, the Canada Health Transfer will grow by more than $1 billion to over $37 billion. We will continue to work with them on how we can create a healthcare system that meets the needs of Canadians for years to come. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Saint-Hyacinthe-Bagotte. Mr. Speaker, the deadline for a new health agreement is very nearly upon us, and we still don't have any news. The provinces agree that the government's decision to maintain cuts to health transfers will hurt our health system. Philippe Couillard has been very clear. Quebec will not accept the conditions because the federal government should not be imposing its conditions on the provinces when it comes to health. Will the Prime Minister respect his commitment and negotiate in good faith with the provinces, or will he simply do what he wants? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, our government is committed to a collaborative approach to health care. Next year, the Canada Health Transfer will grow by over $1 billion to over $37 billion. Minister of Health met with her provincial and territorial counterparts in October, and we will continue to work with them on creating a healthcare system that Canadians can be proud of, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Member for Foothills.
Mr. Speaker, no one is being fooled by the Liberals repeating these tired old talking points. The Canadians are sick and tired of seeing the Prime Minister and his ministers blatantly break ethical rules by attending these cash for access fundraisers. No one should have preferential access to this government simply because they made a large political donation. Mr. Speaker, are the Liberals just that oblivious to the fact that they are breaking ethical rules by asking and making Canadians pay $1,500 to have the ear of the Prime Minister? Or do they think they're smarter than every other Canadian and will simply get away with it?
Hear, hear. Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, if I may just repeat something I said earlier in question period, and that is that we do have some of the strictest rules around fundraising in any of any level of government, and our party respects those rules. The Chief Electoral Officer has stated that Canada's political financing laws are the most advanced and constrained and transparent in the world. Mr. Speaker, in regards to ticketed fundraising events, the Chief Electoral Officer has confirmed that every party and every campaign do them, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Saskatoon, Grasswood.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I understand the Prime Minister loves to quote the rule book, but knowing the rules and actually following the rules are two different things. We know the Prime Minister has been lobbied by people who can afford his company. It has become clear Liberal fundraisers are opportunities to lobby the Liberal cabinet. Access to the Prime Minister in exchange for donation violates the Prime Minister's own ethics rules and possibly the law. So when will the Prime Minister stop this dishonourable practice?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I'm going to continue to repeat. We have some of the strictest rules around fundraising of any level of government, and our party respects those rules. The Chief Electoral Officer stated that Canada's political financing laws are the most advanced and constrained and transparent in the world. In regards to ticketed fundraising events, the Chief Electoral Officer confirmed that every party in every campaign do them, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Montmagny, Lisle, Kamouraska, Rivière-du-Loup. Mr. Speaker, I'll repeat this once again. For weeks, the Liberals have boasted about respecting the rules when it comes to their fundraising events. This benefits the Liberal Party of Canada rather than the state. So the country and the Liberal Party are very different things. Will the Liberals continue to leave their head in the sand and saying, rather than admitting that this is against all ethics, that it's undermining Canadians' faith in democracy, and that it's not even respecting the Prime Minister's own rules? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader.
I'll repeat. We have some of the strictest rules around fundraising of any level of government, and our party respects those rules. The Chief Electoral Officer stated that Canada's political financing laws are the most advanced and constrained and transparent in the world. In regards to ticketed fundraising events, the Chief Electoral Officer has confirmed that every party and every campaign do them, Mr. Speaker. There is no conflict of interest.
The Honourable Member for Lévis-Lotbinière. Mr. Speaker, have you ever thought about what you could buy at this holiday season for $1,500? You could pay your bills, buy something that you really need, make some savings, take care of your family, give a donation to the most vulnerable among us. Oh wait, I forgot. You could also cut in line and buy privileged access to the Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, does the Prime Minister acknowledge that he discussed government business with participants at a $1,500 a head fundraiser for the Liberal Party? Yes or no?
Order. Honourable Secretary Parlementaire.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to reinforce to members that we have some of the strictest rules around fundraising of any level of government, and our party respects those rules. The Chief Electoral Officer stated that Canada's political financing laws are the most advanced and constrained and transparent in the world. In regards to ticketed fundraising events, the Chief Electoral Officer has confirmed that every party and every campaign do them, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Honourable Member for Elgin, Middlesex, London.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister's open and accountable rules are nothing but a farce. Right now, before Cabinet, there's a potential takeover of a Canadian business. The Chinese official behind this takeover lobbied the Prime Minister on November 7th at one of these Cash for Access events. Seriously, I will remind the Deputy House Leader that this is not about election financing rules. This is about the rules set out by the Prime Minister. Will the Prime Minister stop his unethical shakedown and instead start acting in the best interests of Canadians?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader. Order.
Mr. Speaker, I don't know how I can be any clearer. I again say we have some of the strictest rules around fundraising of any level of government, and our party respects those rules. The Chief Electoral Officer stated that Canada's political financing laws are the most advanced and constrained and transparent in the world. In regards to ticketed fundraising events, the Chief Electoral Officer says and confirmed that every party and every campaign do them, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Barry Innisfil.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister is also the self-appointed Minister of Youth. As both, he's to be an example of honour, moral integrity and honesty to our youth. It's part of the job, whether he likes it or not. How would the Prime Minister explain to young Canadians, after writing his own set of ethical rules for himself and his ministers regarding cash for access, that says there should be no preferential access or appearance of preferential treatment to people and organizations, when he doesn't live up to them himself? Mr. Speaker, what is the Minister of Youth teaching young Canadians when he says one thing and does another?
The Honourable Parliament Secretary to the Minister of Employment.
Speaker, I've been in this House for 16 years, and I can say with great confidence that there has never been a greater champion for youth in this House, no greater champion for youth as a Prime Minister than this current Prime Minister. And the initiatives that he's taken, not just now, Mr. Speaker, but going forward as well. He's invested $330 million into the youth employment strategy. $1.5 billion in youth grants. He's established an expert panel to develop innovative new ways to grow jobs for young people. There is no greater champion for youth in this House than our Prime Minister.
The Honourable Member for Abitibi-Bay James Nunavik. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Once again, the Aboriginal community is being shut out of the main discussion that provincial premiers are having about climate change. This is a flagrant lack of respect that flies in the face of the Prime Minister's promise to establish a new relationship with Aboriginal peoples. Climate change, Mr. Speaker, affects Aboriginal peoples directly. So why are they not being invited to participate fully in the discussion about such a critical issue? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Aboriginal Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, and I thank my colleague for his question. He knows, as all Canadians do, including Indigenous Canadians, that there's no relationship more important to us than that with Indigenous people in this country. That's why we recognize and we respect the rights of Indigenous people and their knowledge and their expertise on vital subjects like climate change and their impacts. These are the reasons why the Prime Minister today are meeting with First Nations, Inuit and Métis leaders in Canada to seek their input and to ensure that we have that full nation-to-nation relationship.
Member for Nanaimo, Ladysmith.
You are so right. Our self-proclaimed feminist Prime Minister promised a nation-to-nation relationship with Indigenous people, particularly women. But approving pipelines without consent is not a nation-to-nation relationship. And we see the same unwillingness today. The Native Women's Association of Canada asked repeatedly to be included in today's First Minister's meeting, and the Prime Minister refused. Is this how the Prime Minister treats his most important relationship?
Here, here. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Indigenous Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I think that it is very clear that we have the utmost respect, and our relationship with Indigenous people is very important to us. That is why the Prime Minister is at the table with the 3 leaders of Indigenous governments in this country today. That is why we continue to seek their input, seek their advice, work in partnership with them, something that has not occurred in our country in the past, but something we are very proud of and will continue to build up on in the future.
The Honourable Member for Haldimand, Norfolk.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the small businesses in Haldimand, Norfolk are hurting. They're already facing some of the highest hydro rates in North America, forcing many to close up shop or move to the U.S. But according to the Liberals, that's okay, because they believe that imposing a job-killing carbon tax and spending billions on hot air credits will magically solve the problem. Mr. Speaker, how can the Liberals justify imposing a carbon tax on job creators when our sky-high hydro rates are already driving them to the U.S.?
The Honourable Parliament Secretary to the Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I welcome the question from my colleague, but I would like to remind her the first thing this government did for Canadian and small businesses and Canadian families was to reduce taxes for 9 million Canadians, Mr. Speaker. And furthermore, as a confident government, we invested in Canadian families. We invested in Canadian middle class. And I went from Moncton to Yellowknife, Mr. Speaker, and I can tell you what small business want is an economy that's working for the middle class. Because when the middle class is doing well, all small businesses in the country are going to do well, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Calgary, Rocky Ridge.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, a generation ago, Pierre Trudeau's national energy program drove oil rigs and the jobs that went with them out of Alberta. Today, Alberta has dropped 18 ranks into the bottom half of energy investment destinations in the world. Unemployment is at a 25-year high and rising, and the Liberals are making it worse by forcing a carbon tax on all Canadians and spending billions on hot air credits. Why is the Prime Minister helping Premier Notley kill jobs in Alberta with carbon taxes and bad policy?
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, we have approved 3 pipelines, and that the approval of those pipelines will lead to at least 24,000 jobs being created in Canada. Many of those jobs will be for Albertans. We understand that the downturn in commodity prices has taken its toll on families in Alberta. And that's why we believe that approval of these pipelines, and one in particular that will enable us to expand our export markets, which is in the interests of Alberta and of all of Canada, is good for the citizens of Alberta and all of us.
The Honourable Member for Oxford.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Hardworking Canadians are already struggling to get by, many living paycheck to paycheck. The Liberals' response is to impose a job-killing carbon tax, which will make these families choose between putting food on the table or heating their homes. The Liberals have neglected and refused to stand up for hardworking Canadians just trying to live, eat, and stay warm. Why are the Liberals imposing a disastrous carbon tax on Canadian families that are already struggling to survive?
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, we know that across the country, various jurisdictions are responding to the climate change reality in their own way. And the variety extends from a carbon tax in British Columbia to the plan in Alberta and cap and trade in Ontario and Quebec. The Prime Minister is now meeting with the premiers, which is such a refreshing change for this country that we have confidence that that cooperation will lead to a better and a cleaner Canada.
Honourable Member for Markham Unionville.
Mr. Speaker, in my GTA riding, I constantly hear from the families, seniors and businesses how difficult it is to make ends meet with the high cost of hydro. In Ontario, the Liberals implemented their green energy plan. Electricity rate skyrocketed to the highest in North America. It was such a disaster that Premier Wynne was forced to apologize. Now Prime Minister is copying the same plan. Why are the Liberals shutting down Canadian businesses and putting families out of work, Mr. Speaker? Thank you.
The Honourable Minister of Innovation, Science and Economic
I'd like to thank the
Development.
member for that question. As the member knows, we're making significant investments to create job opportunities, particularly in Markham, where the member is from. There are 1,000 engineering jobs that will be created by GM Canada there, Mr. Speaker. And you know why? According to the Executive Vice President of Global Product Development, we selected Canada for this expansion because of its clear capacity for innovation, proven talent, and strong ecosystem of great universities, startups, and innovative suppliers. That is how we are bringing investments into Canada, creating jobs across the country and in the riding the member opposite represents.
The Honourable Member for Trois-Rivières. Mr. Speaker, before the campaign, the leader of the Liberal Party signed a petition in favour of building a rail bypass in Lac Mégantic. He's a responsible man, so I think he probably read the petition before he signed it. Today, after a year in power, the government is putting on the brakes instead of effectively responding to the citizens of Lac Mégantic's distress. Simple question, Mr. Speaker. When will the Prime Minister honour his signature and restore its tranquility to the citizens of Lac-Mégantic. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and thank you very much to my honourable colleague for that question. And our thoughts continue to be with the families of victims of the tragic July 2013 events in Lac-Mégantic. And our government is committed to improving rail safety, and we stand by the people of Lac-Mégantic. The minister had the honour of meeting with citizens of the area to hear their thoughts and concerns. Furthermore, he was grateful to have Denis Lauzon, the fire chief of Lac-Mégantic, with him as he announced Transportation 2013, a plan that will noticeably accelerate the review of the Railway Safety Act in order to further improve railway safety.
The Honourable Member for Drummond. Mr. Speaker, as Canada's 150th anniversary nears, the federal government is announcing a number of major events with great fanfare. Unfortunately, when Parks Canada launched the French version of its website, it was full of errors. This is a lack of rigor that must immediately be corrected. When will the Minister of Heritage go and see the other ministers and take them to task to ensure that they respect the Official Languages Act once and for all? She needs to get angry. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I recognize the work of my honourable colleague on this matter. It is clear that our government can always do better as concerns our dedication to official languages. With regard to Parks Canada, we will work closely with the Minister of Heritage and the Minister of Environment and Climate Change to address this issue. It must also be noted that we have made much progress. We've appointed a bilingual judge to the Supreme Court of Canada. We've restored the Court Challenges program.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday the Ministers of Finance and Status of Women announced that Viola Desmond would be the first woman to appear on one of our banknotes. Could the Minister for the Status of Women please update the House as to the process that was undertaken to make this excellent selection?
Honourable Minister of the Status of Women.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank my colleague from Don Valley East for the question. And yesterday was truly a historic day as we announced that Viola Desmond will be the first Canadian woman on a banknote.
Hear, hear.
Viola's story reminds us that big change can start with small moments of dignity and bravery and speaking truth to power. We thank the Bank of Canada and the Advisory Council for their rigorous search and the selection process. And I am confident that this is just one of many opportunities we're going to have to celebrate women's role in our history and our future. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Oshawa.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberals' new health and dental tax will hurt Canada's most vulnerable. People with serious diseases and pre-existing conditions are worried. In Quebec, about 1 in 5 policyholders lost their coverage when this was implemented, with only 1 in 10 securing their own coverage afterwards. Mr. Speaker, why do the Liberals keep attacking Canada's most vulnerable?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to remind the member, we are the government working for those who need in this country, and they voted against every measure we put to help the middle class and those who need it. But let me tell the member what we're doing. We're in the process of reviewing our tax system as a whole, Mr. Speaker, because we are the government of tax fairness. We are not looking at any one particular measure. No decision has been made, but you can rest assured that at every step of the way we will continue to improve tax fairness in this country, make our tax code efficient, and making sure that we always protect middle class in this country. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Halliburton, Kawartha Lakes, Brock.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The issue of federal immigration detainees at the Central East Correctional Centre in Lindsay is extremely concerning. This provincial maximum security institution was to be used as a temporary holding facility, but now officers are dealing with challenges far beyond their scope. To make matters worse, CBSA is providing extremely limited support. These detainees need to be moved to a federal facility which is properly set up to deal with their unique needs. When will the Public Safety Minister take action and move these detainees?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Public Safety. Mr. Speaker, this is a perfect opportunity to remind members that in June we already announced $137 million to restore penitentiaries so that we will be finding alternative solutions because we believe that thanks to these this method, that double bunking is the last resort.
Mr. Speaker, a year ago, the Indigenous Affairs Minister threw 38 First Nations a pass and they didn't want to share their financial information. In doing so, it threw members into the dark. Their concerns have continued to grow, and they're starting to mobilize. What does the minister have to say to Karen McCarthy, who stated to the CBC, the system does not protect the rights of band memberships?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Indigenous Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I think the system does not protect the rights of a lot of Indigenous members in business on reserve as well. And that's why, including First Nations, our government and everyone that's involved wants increased transparency and accountability, and we want to be able to achieve this through fully working together in partnership to ensure that we have a solution to this that is not going to be top-down like the former government had implemented, but it's going to be one that is developed in working together in partnership to ensure that First Nations fiscal transparency is open, it is accountable, and it works for First Nations.
Member for Kamloops, Thompson Caribou.
Mr. Speaker, they talk about being concerned about transparency. They and the ministers just spent 3 days at AFN meetings and did the word transparency and how we can be accountable to the membership. It did not come up once. According to Karen McCarthy, the system where we file grievances and allegations to INAC, it really doesn't go anywhere. Further, we heard from Charmaine Stick. INAC and AFN need to help us. We need help instead of taking our leadership to court. It has been over a year now. They have done nothing. When will she put actions to those words and show these women some respect?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Indigenous Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my colleague for her question. And one thing she is exactly right about, and that is both the minister, myself, and the staff in INAC have spent the entire week meeting with First Nations governments from all across the country on a variety of issues, Mr. Speaker, day in and day out that are important to them. We have talked about the Fiscal Transparency Act. We have made it known over and over again that where there is any complaints, where there is any allegations, as a department, they are being investigated. They are being looked up on very seriously. Where forensic audits have been required, they have been launched.
The Honourable Member for Courtenay Alberni.
Mr. Speaker, this government is considering privatizing our airports, yet Canadians already pay among the highest travel fees in the world. And provincial tourism ministers agree. They don't want Canada's airports privatized. Canada ranks #1 for airport infrastructure. So why would the Liberals try to get private investment in this area? Is it because they want their friends in big business to reap the profits, or simply because they don't care about middle-class Canadians paying more for air travel?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Transport.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I want to mention that our government is obviously committed to getting Canadian products to global markets. Canada is a trading nation, and being competitive on a global scale requires world-class infrastructure, and that is why, to support this, we are investing $10.1 billion over 11 years, as announced in the Fall Economic Statement. We will make strategic investments in trade and transportation projects that build stronger, more efficient transportation corridors to international markets and help Canadian businesses to compete, grow, and create more jobs for Canada's middle class. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Hochelaga. Mr. Speaker, for some years now, many plant closures have affected the economy of Eastern Montreal. After the Shell refinery and the Mabe home appliances plant, it is now the Christie Cookie factory that is closing in Hochelaga-Maisonneuve. That's another 454 good jobs that are disappearing from my riding. I met with the plant managers to discuss possible solutions, but they were clear the decision is final. Does the minister have a plan to ensure the survival and the creation of good jobs in Eastern Montreal? The Honourable Minister of Innovation and Science. I'd like to thank my colleague for the question, Mr. Speaker.
Raised by the member, and that is why we're making significant investments through DEC, a regional development agency in Quebec, which is focusing on job opportunities in that region. I would like to highlight that we actually made an investment in maintaining, created 1,000 jobs at Mirabel in the aerospace sector. We also invested $54 million in space, $54 million in aerospace, $108 million in total to looking in those areas. We're also focusing in those regions to make sure that we help diversify the economy, help small businesses, Mr. Speaker, and we'll continue to make sure that we make investments that create jobs.
The honourable member for Mégantic-l'Érable. Mr. Speaker, the petition supporting the rail bypass around Lac Mégantic has the signature of a very famous public personality, that of the Prime Minister himself. And the residents didn't have to pay $1,500 to get it because the Liberal leader wasn't Prime Minister at the time. Will the Prime Minister send a clear signal today to the people of Lac Mégantic, committing to build the rail bypass that will end their suffering? Can the Prime Minister show that a signature free of charge has just as much clout as a $1,500 fundraiser? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Transport.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to my honourable colleague for that question. And as I mentioned earlier, our government is committed to improve rail safety, and we stand by the people of Lac Mégantic. And I repeat that our thoughts are with the victims of this tragedy. The member should note that the final results of the city-led study have not been released, and we are still awaiting the technical details. Therefore, we would like to see the results before rendering a final decision, but we are conscious that the citizens of Lac Mégantic would like a rail bypass. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Sarnia-Lambton.
Mr. Speaker, Coast Guard employees in my riding have not been paid as a result of the Phoenix pay fiasco. Single mothers have not been paid in multiple pay cycles and may lose their homes, and some workers are owed $20,000 in pay. It's Christmas, and the Liberals have made promise after promise about fixing this system. I approached the minister last week on these specific problems, yet she has done absolutely nothing, hasn't even contacted them. Will the minister finally ensure that everyone owed money gets it in time to actually enjoy Christmas?
That this system, the problems with the pay system are unacceptable. This government is doing a number of things to mitigate the problems, and we are focused clearly on improving the pay system. Resolving these cases is our top priority. Thank you.
Member for Edmonton West.
Mr. Speaker, public servants affected by the Liberal Phoenix pay fiasco are maxing out their credit cards to make ends meet. And with Christmas weeks away, they're wondering if there'll be anything left to put under their trees. These are real people, Mr. Speaker, not just case numbers. When will the minister devote the same energy to fixing your mess as she does to blaming others for it?
The Parliamentary Secretary, the Minister of Public Services.
The problems affecting public service pay are completely unacceptable. I know how untenable this situation is. I can assure you that we are working diligently to solve the problems linked to pay, that this is our priority.
Member for Kelowna Lake Country.
Mr. Speaker, this government values the role of science and the ongoing contributions our scientists make to our environment, economy, and our communities. Can the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Science update this House on what the government is doing to support innovation and research?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Science.
Mr. Speaker, the member for Kelowna Lake Country and our government knows science is the foundation of a strong, healthy, and prosperous society. That is why we are committed to supporting cutting-edge genomics research. Just yesterday, Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Science announced an investment of $32 million to support the latest recipients of Genome Canada's large-scale applied research projects competition. This investment will help renew our traditional industries like forestry, fisheries, and mining, and will increase Canada's global competitiveness, our economic growth, and our social well-being.
Honourable Member for Souris, Moose Mountain.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberal announcement to expedite the phasing out of coal-powered electricity has created panic in my riding. For over 10,000 residents, mainly in Coronach and Estevan, this announcement is a death knell. There will be no jobs, which will cause mass exodus. Property values will plummet, and the trickle-down effect will devastate families. When will the Liberals stop pretending to care about Southeast Saskatchewan and actually start creating jobs?
Mr. Speaker, the member knows putting a price on carbon pollution is a priority not just for this government, but for governments all across Canada. And there are a variety of ways in which governments have chosen to do that, running the range from a carbon tax in British Columbia to the cap-and-trade system in Ontario and Quebec. We also know that the Prime Minister is meeting with Indigenous leaders today and with premiers from the provinces, which is a refreshing change to the way this country does its business.
Well, member for Mississauga, Streetsville.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This week, the Senate Transportation and Communication Committee released an interim report on the safe transportation of crude oil. The report makes 7 recommendations and calls on the Minister of Natural Resources Canada to modernize the National Energy Board by broadening the board's mandate to ensure effective communication with stakeholders and improve consultation with Indigenous people. Can the Minister of Natural Resources update the House as to the progress our government has made on this important campaign commitment?
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Thank the member for Mississauga, Streetsville, and to the members of the Senate Committee for their report and recommendations on this important file. I have appointed a panel of distinguished Canadians to look at ways that we can create the best energy regulator in the world and ensure that Canadians feel confident that their views on energy projects have been heard. The panel will be reporting back to me by May 15th, 2017, addressing concerns head-on and building a process that is more inclusive and transparent. Our energy regulator will make decisions that will carry the confidence of Canadians.
The Honourable Member for Beauport, Côte-de-Beaupré, Île-d'Orléans, Charlevoix. Mr. Speaker, Canada's Competition Bureau has raised a red flag concerning the Liberal government's new infrastructure program. All of us, including the 40 Liberal members from Quebec, followed the testimony from the Charbonneau Commission. So why didn't anyone realize that that this type of free-for-all is dangerous and opens the door to collusion? Mr. Speaker, will the Prime Minister take things in hand, or is he waiting for us to call for a commission of inquiry? Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Infrastructure. One thing is clear, we will ensure that our investments respect principles that are dear to us, which is openness and transparency and fairness, and we ensure that our partners undertake a fair procurement process. Mr. Speaker, we are verifying this program on a regular basis, including external independent audits by the Auditor General. We are investing taxpayers' monies responsibly for the benefit of all Canadians. The Honourable Member for La Pointe de l'Île. Mr. Speaker, we know that across the world that institutional bilingualism means that minority languages are undergoing attrition. This has been shown for 40 years, and what is the federal government doing? It is undertaking a promotional tour of institutional bilingualism. They're reinforcing English speakers in Quebec, and they're scattering around a few French services elsewhere in Canada. Do they realize that institutional bilingualism sounds the death knell for the French language in the Americas? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Mr. Speaker, thank you for the opportunity to speak to the dedication of this government to official bilingualism and linguistic duality. The consensus that exists in this country is thanks to our founding people's Anglophones and Francophones. We have built a pluralistic society on these fundaments, and thanks to our dialogue with Indigenous people, we have valued both official languages across the country. That is who we are as Canadians. The Honourable Member for Repentigny. The premiers of Quebec and the provinces are going to be discussing health transfers. We know the position of Liberals. What they are doing is cutting transfers as decided by the Conservatives with the conditions as called for by the NTB, which is the worst of both worlds. Cutting transfers means undermining the care given to patients, and imposing conditions is taking them hostage. Just a few hours away from this meeting, will the Prime Minister finally recognize that health is an exclusive Quebec jurisdiction and reinstate the the funding with no strings attached? I would like a clear answer. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Health.
And as I said previously in this House, there will be no cuts to healthcare. Our government is committed to a collaborative approach to healthcare. Next year, the Canada Health Transfer will grow by more than $1 billion to over $37 billion. The Minister of Health met with provincial and territorial counterparts in October, and we will continue to work with them in creating a healthcare system that meets the needs of all Canadians, including Quebec. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Joliette. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Finally, the government has admitted that it is embarrassing to allow banks to undercut Quebec consumers. Finally, with C-29, the government is realizing that its entire section that amends the Bank Act is a problem. So simply, why don't they withdraw this section from the bill? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, we are always attuned to Canadians and to consumers, obviously. As I have said in this House, the Marcotte decision allowed access to clarify how consumers would be protected with regard to banks and financial services, and that as we have done, we have modernized the framework that is favorable to consumers. Mr. Speaker, I might remind my colleague that with every measure we have put in place with this bill, we have protected the higher interests of consumers. That is what we announced this morning, and we will continue to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is for the Minister of Environment and Climate Change. Lancaster Sound represents one of the most pristine and richest wildlife areas in the world. Its addition to Canada's national marine conservation areas is long overdue. Last year, the Minister received a detailed report from the Kikitani Inuit Association. This report outlined recommendations for larger conservation boundaries based on community consultations and Inuit traditional knowledge. Will the Minister ensure Inuit traditional knowledge is included in the plan, and when can we expect it to be finalized? Thank you, Mr.
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
I'd like to thank the honourable member for its very important question. Our government is committed to a national marine conservation area in Lancaster Sound. It will contribute significantly to our government's domestic and international commitments to conservation, and we announced funding for the marine conservation area in Lancaster Sound in Budget 2016. Inuit traditional knowledge has been a major component of the feasibility assessment for the marine conservation area. I can also assure the member that Inuit traditional knowledge will be an important part of interim management planning and in the first formal management plan to be completed within 5 years of the establishment of the conservation area. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
This ends question period for today.
Tabling of documents. Dépôt de documents. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, pursuant to Standing Order 36, Bracket 8, I have the honour to table in both official languages the government's responses to 8 petitions.
Tabling of documents. Dépôt de documents. Introduction of government bills. Dépôt de projet de loi émanant du gouvernement. Statements by ministers. Déclaration du ministre. Reports from interparliamentary delegations. Rapport de délégation interparlementaire. Presenting reports from committees. The Honourable Member for Don Valley West.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have the honour to table in both official languages the 7th report of the Standing Committee on Public Safety and National Security concerning Bill C-22, an act to establish the National Security and Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians and to make consequential amendments to certain acts.
And has decided to report the bill back to the